Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, the music's a little bit loud there. All right, well, we've got a big day. It just kind of seems like all of the major things that we've been looking at are like converging into a single day or two. We've got the CPI coming out here in about 5 minutes. We have Bitcoin ETFs should start trading today. And there has been some action in the Red Sea with a tanker being hijacked, and it is now sailing towards Iran. So the whole thing is, I don't know. The CPI news might not even be the biggest thing that happens today, but we'll see. Let's come over and look at how markets have been moving in the overnight action. So here in the treasuries, you can see that despite, the selling yesterday, which was, by the way, you notice how during our session, it's like super tight and like the movement is happening outside of our session. But in the overnight, we have moved a little bit up. All right. In the S&P 500, they continue to look bullish here on the upside. Oil moving up probably because of that tanker news that I told you about. Silver and gold out also going up, so maybe some risk premium coming into the market because of that. Kappa, this is like one of the first times in like 2 weeks that I've come in and seen copper up, so that's good. Dollar still about where it is, just a little bit down from yesterday. Japanese yen not doing anything too terrible. I mean, it's been on a long downtrend, but it's kind of going a little bit sideways. And then we've got Bitcoin doing all sorts of wild stuff yesterday, but when the the news happened, that's here. So here's the 11th. So after 1400 was about when we got it. There was kind of all over the place. I guess we did get a spike a little bit later after I stopped watching, but like it's been back and forth. Now, in the overnight, a little bit of a rise. I think that when it starts trading, if you see a bunch of people come in and they're like, okay, we're going to allocate money into Bitcoin as soon as it starts trading, so you're probably going to see some movement there. Most likely to the upside, but you never know. I don't want anybody to be like, oh, you said it was going to move up, you were wrong. But I am predicting volatility for Bitcoin on that one. And I think the big one is IBTC. So that's probably an instrument I would probably try and look at. So that is the situation. We come back over here. Okay, so CPI. We are looking for US core CPI month over month. Previous reading spot 3. Consensus estimate spot 3. So if we got anything above spot 3, market will be very unhappy about it. If we got something as low as, well, I don't know if 0.2 would be a huge deal. I think 0.2 would probably be slightly positive, but below that, then you definitely start to get like wild rallies and things. But it is a little bit more likely to be hot than to be cold. Okay. Overall, though, the market is not pricing in a whole lot of volatility. This one's kind of weird because there is basically everything's been on hold for the CPI this week, hasn't it? It's been a very quiet week, relatively speaking, even though there has been relatively large flow in the treasuries. So it seems like everybody's talking about it and anticipating it, but the market is not actually pricing in a lot of volatility for it. So we'll see what happens. And we've got now About a minute and a half. They are polling, so. When I see the liquidity pull like that, it makes me feel the energy in the air, man. Let's see what happens. I'm not looking to take any kind of trade immediately off of the news, but let's see what happens. Here we go. Whoa. Okay, so core CPI is in line at spot 3, so no trade for me for sure. Man, big spikes both ways though. Wowzer. It looks like overall the volume was short though. Okay, so core CPI was spot 3. CPI month over month was spot 3 versus an expected spot 2. So that's maybe why they're leaning a little bit to the sell side at the moment. And what about year over year? Year over year, we got 3.4 versus an expected 3.2. And core CPI year over year is up 3.9 versus 3.8. Okay, so that's not like a disaster of a report per se. Okay, that's not a disaster, but is slightly negative. We're going to have to go and read into the report. So let's go to the report. Try and get a reading on what the individual components were. The index for shelter continued to rise in December, contributing over half of the monthly all items increase. Okay, this was expected by us, by the way. Energy index rose spot 4% over the month as increases in the electricity index and the gasoline index more than offset a decrease in natural gas. Food index increased spot 2% in December as it did in November. Okay, that's good. Index for food at home increased 0.1 over the month, and index for food away from home rose spot 3. The index for all items less food and energy rose spot 3, the same monthly increase as in November. Indexes which increased in December included shelter, motor vehicle insurance, and medical care. So that's pretty much in line with what I recall the Goldman analysis suggesting, that vehicle insurance would go up, for instance. The index for household furnishing and operations and the index for personal care were among those that decreased over the month. Okay, and then they're just going down through the individual things. Technical note: this report is a little bit different, and they don't have the things split out in the main report. It looks like now I have to click on a link. CPI. U.S. city average by expenditure category, by detail expenditure category. Ooh, there we go. Then that's what I was looking for. So now you can see, milk increased. Spot 5%. What's with the price of milk going up? What the what? Okay, Financial Juice tweets, traders of futures contracts tied to Fed policy rate reduce bets on March rate cut after inflation data. So they are reading this report as hawkish. I wouldn't say it's like a huge hawkish. It's not like one that I can come in and be like automatically, this is going to be a trend day. I think that where they're at is reasonable. This may completely retrace, and given the situation, it could completely retrace. But we did get about 15,000 contracts worth of selling, so it was a significant amount of selling. Let's clear our 10-year DOM here. Since they're at 112, which has been kind of a key area as of late. Oh, Elon Musk was on a tweet rampage 6 hours ago. Good grief. Merit should be the only reason for hiring. I disagree, actually. Can you believe me saying that? I can't believe I'm like sitting here saying that, but I think that merit should be the only thing that matters when it comes to things like school, things that have a permanent impact on your opportunities. But when it comes to hiring for jobs, there are multiple factors about a person that will matter. Okay, I might choose to hire one person that is clearly less qualified than another person because I believe that they have ways of thinking and ideas and views that would add diversity to my team and make me more competitive. I might reject a person who is very qualified because I think that they're a jerk, or because I don't think that they'll fit in with the work culture that I'm trying to create. Or, it's not. I don't think that you can say merit should be the only reason for hiring, and I don't think that Elon Musk actually even believes that. Am I wrong? You can tell me I'm wrong. It's okay. They tried to get back up there to the open, but it fell back down to 112 even. It's kind of curious that it's like 112 even so it continues to be the place that's like, okay. Scott says I'm right. I guess I'll try and help you out here, Elon. I don't think that merit should be the only reason for hiring per se, but the entire DEI regime in corporate America, particularly as it relates to investing, has no place. I really don't think that you should be investing based on like the race of their CEO or which kind, how many gay people they have in their advertisements and things like that. I think that that's nonsense, especially when you're running like a fund with other people's money. You're the boss. It's your money, your team. You make the decision that you think will give you the most effective team. And there's a lot of things that factor into what will give you the most effective team. But when we're talking about like the society as a whole, where are we going to invest our capital? Which groups of people have advantage at college and things like that? We should not be trying to pick winners and losers and basically undermining a merit-based system. Yeah, well, okay, so you bring up a good point for us to clarify on there, Uzi. He says the underlying philosophies that come with DEI are poison, not diversity itself as a concept. So I think that if I'm making a team and I have somebody that is from Europe and somebody that's from the United States and somebody that's from South America, I think that will overall tend to help me make better decisions because I'm likely to get a wider variety of views. But the key thing is like the reason why that helps is because I get wider varieties of views. But if all three of those people went to college at Harvard, then I don't think that I actually have that diversity, do I? Right? They're all going to have the same type of thinking from that one particular college, and they were all educated in the United States and so on and so forth. So I think that a lot of so-called diversity out there is a farce. Yeah. Okay, they did decline back down here a little bit. I am kind of feeling the itch to want to take a trade. I don't think that I know enough to predict that we're going to go and bust the lows. We saw 15,000 contracts sell, and then we saw 15,000 contracts buy back up. Also, we saw a lot more aggressive action in the 30-year compared to the others. So it'll be close, but you might actually see the 30-year breach the lows first if it happens. That's true. Ultimately, those three people have to have some degree of expertise in whatever it is you're doing. Hiring a Yukon and witch doctor for your app development team is going to make it. Yeah, well. This kind of one of the hard things is that, like, I think the reality is for just about any position that you're hiring, there is an unfathomable amount of people that could potentially do that job. Like if I was making enough to pay somebody a reasonable wage, because I think, like, I would love to have people to help me with the stream here live and everything. Maybe someday somebody will come around that's in the area and is willing to come down here that early and help me run the stream just for tips or something like that. But if I was going to hire somebody, I wouldn't want to just hire them for minimum wage, and I would want to be hiring them like we're starting a fund or something like that, and so I need people to help me run my fund, right? So if I go and I'm looking for people to help me run my fund, and I put job advertisements out there on LinkedIn, I'm pretty sure that I would get thousands of applications. And that's not anything about me. That's just like I'm kind of saying this would be like bottom of the barrel, and just even any job that you post online gets thousands of applications. And how do you filter them is tough. And I think that it would be wrong to filter them initially by things like race. That would be awful. That would be stupid, I think. But, you go and you find the people that you think are the most qualified and seem to fit what you're looking for the most, and then you pick from maybe 12 people that you interview, and at that point, then maybe their background may matter. Right? On the other hand, I have seen some situations. I think probably the best example is Biden's press secretary, man. I got to be really careful when I'm saying this, but I just got to tell you, they've made a lot of decisions in the Biden administration, and I don't think that you can just explain it with like that they're diversity hires. Like, how do you get so many incompetent people in one administration? I just don't get it. Like, I am almost positive that there is a black woman out there that could be a better press secretary than the current press secretary, right? I just don't get how their hiring has been so incompetent, right? But I do kind of suspect that maybe diversity hiring over there is maybe one factor of it. I think also there's probably a lot of nepotism over there, right? Psyoping. So I actually wanted to ask you about this today. So have you guys seen the stuff, new stuff this week on the unidentified aerial phenomenon story? Holy crap. So there's like 3 things going on right now. One is that TMZ is doing like a 3-part UFO video series. And they released part 2 yesterday. I think part 2 comes out on Friday. I'd have to double check that, but I think it comes out soon. And yes, the jellyfish thing was one of the things that was in the documentary. So they're saying that this object was seen in a war zone in Iraq, and we just have like one video. A lot of people say it looks like bird poop, but I don't think that like bird poop on the lens would look like that. So I don't know exactly how you get that, but I certainly think there's like possibility that the video was not of an object and that there's a simple explanation for it, sort of a thing. Except for that, then there's the claimed eyewitness accounts. Now, these are like claimed accounts, so I can't verify those. But from the way these guys are talking, you're going to get people coming out and testifying that they saw this thing. Because they're saying that, like, you couldn't see it, but if you had heat imaging on, then you could see it. And that, like, they had a team on the ground trying to go after this thing and they could see it. And then they're also said that they saw it go into the water and then come up out of the water and fly away. Just wondering, is TMZ making the video on Calabasas? I don't know. So the most recent one was there's another video. Well, so let me show you this one, man. Let me find it. This one you might not have seen, Uzi. Okay. Oh, okay. This is from episode 3. This is a new UAP that they show in the 3rd episode. What the F is that? Like, what? Is disclosure going to happen on TMZ? Okay, like so like I can watch that other video and be like, okay, maybe that's bird crap. I can't even begin to fathom what kind of explanations people would come up for that one. Could be AI generated at this point. Okay, so then the other thing that's happening, okay, is David Grush, who is one of the guys that was like in the government intelligence agencies, like doing investigations about unidentified aerial phenomenon, and was, you know, like doing whistleblowing and stuff like that. Okay. He is going to be publishing an op-ed somewhere. We don't know where, but he's going to be publishing an op-ed somewhere. And he did a little like private meeting where he gave a presentation and described to people what would be in the op-ed. And somebody went to this meeting and basically leaked the meeting And he took it down because people, other people that attended the meeting said that what you posted was not entirely accurate and you misunderstood some things. And he took it off with the understanding that, like, we're going to find out about it soon anyways. Okay. So, but what this guy was claiming was that he had seen that David Grush claims the United States has one of these things, a UFO, and that the UFO is about 40 feet in diameter, but that when you go inside of the UFO, it's larger than a football field. Right? Like, so now you're getting wild stuff. And this is a guy that, like, I don't think would be talking if he didn't, if it was stuff the government absolutely did not want us to hear, you know? Yeah, Doctor Who did it first. Well, the other thing that he says is that they've been, like, doing stuff related to this since before the 1930s. That's another complete wild thing. So then it comes back down to this, like, is this all a distraction from the government? Because it is kind of getting to that point that, like, there's enough stuff coming out from government sources, essentially, that if it's not real, the government is intentionally trying to deceive us, right? I think it's basically to that point. But the way that he talked was, well, no, I mean that they're lying to us specifically about this, okay? Well, actually, it's kind of funny because either way they're lying to us about it, right? Either they have been involved with aliens for, like, basically 100 years now and they've somehow kind of kept it under wraps, or they're putting all this stuff out about aliens right now that's not actually true. Right? The jellyfish thing is not some rando on the internet, concocted some hoax video. That is like military assets being filmed. That picture that I just showed you. Why did I close it? From TMZ. I don't think that is some person pranking TMZ. I think that came from the military. Okay, the MH370 stuff I kind of ignored because I thought it was all BS. Yeah. Okay, so here's why this one gets really weird. After the Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 disappeared, about 4 days after that, a video surfaced on the internet showing these UFOs flying around the plane and causing it to disappear. And there was kind of like some weird changes in, like, the sort of stuff that I was seeing online and everything around that time. And so a lot of people are claiming that event was the thing that, like, set elites and everyone around the world off, that, like, now we really kind of have to start talking about this. That's the theory. Okay. But I remember seeing that video way back when it happened. Like, I saw that video way years ago. I remember that. And at the time I thought it looked fake. And I look at it now and I still think it looks fake. But a lot of people point things out, as things that would be very difficult to fake, or things that may potentially verify the authenticity of it. I think the most recent thing that they were showing was that when the UFOs go through clouds, you can actually see them affect the clouds. And they also have like multiple viewing angles of this thing, which is also kind of wild. But like, I don't actually believe that one. I'm more interested in these other ones because there are military reports. So like the jellyfish thing, they're saying that there was people on the ground going after them, which means that we're going to be able to interview them, right? That probably within a year you're going to see military personnel testifying to trying to track this thing down on the ground. That would be the thing that would be like verifying it, I guess. But when you go on to that sort of a thing, how are you going to verify anything? So the thing that I don't get is the motivation for the government now to be going into this whole like complicated hoax to distract people sounds like a little ridiculous to me. I don't know if that's true, man. Verifying UFOs has no impact on you whatsoever. So I do think it was kind of interesting. I think I kind of understand the UFO people a little bit now, because it makes you feel like you're part of an inside club, Oh, I'm like one of the few people that understands that aliens are actually real, and like, how do we cope with that? Because it does have pretty significant religious implications, if any of this stuff is true, right? So I think that there are some people that are inclined to like it because of that. But what I'm seeing is like kind of like a slow burn of the most legitimate information that you could get, at the very least. It's like slowly coming out. I think that if there's anything to it, that it will matter in the future. That it will be a market moving thing in the future. Like I think something that could happen is we will get verification that Lockheed Martin owns one of these crafts, and or has like reverse engineered the technology and made one or something like that. Okay. And when that happens, I think you want to be long Lockheed Martin stock, right? Like, so I think it will matter at some point. Yeah, when that happens, you have your verification. Well, and the thing is because we're following this story, we're kind of going to have a little bit of an advantage about knowing what's going on. Now, the other side of this, though, is that I don't think... So for instance, with David Grush, I don't think that David Grush has actually seen this craft that he's talking about. I think he's saying that other people have told him about it. So I don't think the government themselves actually really know what UAPs are. I don't think the government actually knows what these things are. That's kind of the big caveat to all of this. Is I think we're all assuming that this is proof of aliens or something like that. I think that the government has a lot of crazy videos and that they're concerned and they want to know what's going on, but that they don't 100% know what's going on. And even these people that are saying that like they have a craft are saying that the government like doesn't know where they come from and things like that. So the actual implications of it are unknowable. But I guess I am at this point ruling out that it's just a complete and utter hoax. I don't think it's a complete and utter hoax. I think that it may not be what we think it is. It may not be as significant as we think it is, but I don't think that it's a complete and utter hoax at this point. But that's been getting wild, man. Okay, well, the 10-year did come to new lows, so... Oh, dang, it's already too late. That last little dive was a bit much. Like right when I started to be like, maybe I need to take this more seriously. Now, interestingly enough, the dollar's rising pretty hard off of that. $102.32. Gold spiked and was moved lower. Japanese yen kind of same with basically that whole complex. Oil reacting to it, but not super strongly. What a day. So I really want to short it. I really do. But we slipped from like 22 down to 20. So that's probably going to hold it back for at least a few minutes. This is kind of turning into the sort of move that just like, I think it's going to come back for me a little bit and it just never does, you know? Yeah, the E-mini is puking pretty hard. Let's come back and look at these from a volume profile perspective to kind of see where we're at on terms of like if some of these higher time frame momentum strategies might start doing things. I don't think that the S&P 500 is necessarily to that point, but they did give up like a whole day's worth of gains. So it is a pretty brutal move. And over here on ZN, there's a ways to go down below us before they start to get to super critical levels. So let's come and look at it on a daily chart. Day. Oh, I added all sorts of nonsense over here. I should backtest this trailing stop on its own. I added it as part of like the larger strategy, but I didn't test it on a daily basis on its own, and I find it very curious that they do at points react almost to the tick to it. Okay, but we're right around the 200-day moving average still. And the 50 is like way down there. And the volatility, the total range for today is actually not that big yet. So I think the problem here is like if we saw a pullback, I wouldn't rule out it coming all the way back up to 26. So I don't know if I can just, as she goes here. Certainly though, if I'm going to take a trade, I want to be long interest rates now at this point, right? So did your trading overnight and now you're not locked and loaded for a rant? Yeah, so anyways, but Uzi, you didn't answer the question that I was really interested in, because I kind of suspected that you would say that it's just a psyop, but my question is why? If it's a psyop, why? I'm certainly seeing things these days that I'm pretty convinced at this point that there's going to be wild stuff that happens in 2024 just politically because of the election, right? I'm not necessarily saying like we're going to start a new war or anything like that, although I keep seeing fund managers saying that this is like the most dangerous geopolitical environment they've ever seen. And with the tanker being abducted right now, Iran abducting it, that should, is the administration going to do something about that? Because they created this whole task force to defend shipping there and everything, and now Iran, I don't know what that is like. And then there's the whole like, oh my gosh, the insurrection theory. Okay, let me tell you something. When Democrats say that January 6th was a quote insurrection, they're full of crap. It just does not, in any legal sense, fit insurrection. And that's why nobody's been charged with it, by the way. Okay. So this whole nonsense about taking them off the ballot, I went like down the big rabbit hole. Like I read every kind of like legal analysis I could about it and all of the different precedents that people are likely to bring up and so on and so forth. I'm almost as, not quite as confident, but almost as confident as I was with the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, that the Supreme Court will reject this whole thing and say that they have to put Trump on the ballot. That they're going to reject the idea of taking Trump off of the ballot for constitutional reasons around insurrection. And it's going to be a 6-0 or sorry, it's going to be a 6-2 or 8-0 decision. It really is. But here's the thing. Like they did a survey and like something like 80% of Democrats believed it. Right? So how are they going to react when the Supreme Court smacks us down? It's not going to be pretty. Not necessarily saying there will be violence or anything, but a lot of salt is going to be mined that day, right? Feeding them UFO stuff will deviate them from spreading anti-government sentiment online, especially when the government is the one that's telling them it's real. I don't know if that makes sense. Because all it's doing is driving more anti-government sentiment, right? Because now everybody's saying, wait, you have the technology to turn 40 feet into a football field and you've been keeping it from us for over 100 years? Yeah, that the implications of that are pretty wild. But maybe the aliens told them not to. That's my theory. If it's all true, then why did they not tell anybody? My theory is the aliens told them not to. The Nordic aliens in particular came down and said, "Don't do that. It'll cause a mess. They're not ready." Oh, the other theory is an important point, by the way, to all this. I know it's we're in conspiracy theory land. Okay. Garesh suggested that the reason that the U.S. government is starting to talk about it now is because another country is considering disclosure. Like, I'm guessing the Chinese, but basically they're saying the Chinese are thinking about coming out and saying something. and then that would be a big mess for us. So they're kind of trying to get out in front of it. The gulf between what you entertain is plausible and what you want is staggering. No, yeah, I do. I actually do. Just because, like, I think that it has to make logical sense. So that's a so you've got to concoct all of these videos and pay all of these people to go and lie to the American people, and you'd say you're doing it for the country and whatnot. And then you're creating this culture that exists for a long time that has long-term implications. So if somebody in the government, okay, so like if I was in the government and I was, you know, what is the word, advising people on this sort of stuff, and a plan like this was brought to my desk, I'd be like, are you guys insane? Like, this is stupid. You're doing this big huge thing for like what benefits? Because you don't want people spreading anti-government sentiment about the stuff that you're actually doing. The risk reward in that kind of a plan does not sound plausible to me. No, it doesn't. What sounds plausible to me? That there are people in the military that think that they saw things and shared it with David Grush and these others. And David Grush and these others don't have any way of verifying it themselves and turned it into a bigger thing that it is. I think that that's plausible. That's plausible. That there are weird phenomenons out there that you will see on like infrared and night vision radar sorts of things that we don't understand, but that they're not aliens. I think that's plausible, right? Just energy phenomenons or something like that. It could be a thing. But they're just trying to manipulate, the government is trying to manipulate us. I don't think makes sense. So my ADHD, like, hyper interconnected brain is like going off all over the place now, because this just makes me think about this thing that we were talking about the other day about like, I don't believe that conservatives in the United States are really conservatives in the purest sense of the word, because to me, conservative means having a reverence for the past and understanding that things are the way they are for reasons, and that we should still have progress, but that we should be very careful and intentional about it. That to me is conservatism. If you're conservative, you know, so like a good example here of why I feel like they're not conservatives is the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has been around for almost 100 years now. Okay. It's been incredibly effective. They've certainly had their missteps, but it's been incredibly effective, and I do believe that it overall reduces market volatility. But conservatives hate the Federal Reserve, and their whole thing is we should get rid of the Federal Reserve, right? It's not conservative. If you're conservative, then you would be wanting to understand the Federal Reserve as much as possible. You know? It's been effective at transferring money to the top. All. I don't know if that's explicitly the Federal Reserve per se. It is. I mean, there has been. Okay. Do I want to talk about this, or do I? No, let me finish my other thought first. I can come back to that if we want. Nah, I think that if you have an institution that's been around for a long time and has worked, that you should be defending and understanding it. And conservatives still want to move over to a gold standard. So I say conservatives in the United States are not actually conservatives. They're just anti-government. That's really what it is. We don't have a conservative party in the United States anymore. Everybody is a liberal party, and it's just whether you are pro-government liberal or anti-government liberal. That's how I feel. Uzi says yes. Man, I am so glad that I did not try and take a trade there because I saw that. I was like, okay, I'm getting interested in it, and it slipped through, and I was like, okay, hold up. And now look, it's been reversing the whole way. The left dragged the right to the left a long time ago. Yeah, like post World War II. Like the real conservatives in the United States were destroyed in World War II, and you know what? I think that they deserved it. Quite frankly, I did not like what FDR did and some of the things that he did to like pack the Supreme Court and all of these other things. But there was some things that the conservatives were standing in the way of that did need to happen. So now the world is shifted. What would be considered conservative would be slightly different, but would still be showing a reverence for the existing structures and mechanisms that we have in our society. And they don't. So they're not actually conservative within that sense. They are left. They want to radically change things without much thought to why things are the way that they are and how we can do this responsibly and so forth. They just want to change it. And it's just whether you want to change it with giving the government more or less power. Which kind of bothers me, to be honest, because I think the reason why I'm conservative is because I think that the world is complex, and trying to come in and just completely reshape society, it's such a complicated system, is very irresponsible. That will never work, and that's why I consider myself conservative. Is like we have to actually like understand this thing and like make small, incremental, intentional changes over time. Right? It's kind of funny because even though I'm a conservative, I'm unhappy with the rate of progress in the United States legislatively, right? There are some changes that we like very clearly know need to happen, and Congress doesn't do anything. Your opinions on Israel have to be absolutely pure, or the right thinks you hate Jewish people? I don't know. I don't know if I have enough data to really unpack that one. You know? I tell you what, I do know. There are some people out there online that just straight up spew anti-Semitic trash. Like they think that the Jews are part of a global cabal to try and undermine American society, and they are definitely out there, and they are very, very active on the right, and especially on the Donald, and they spew their bullshit everywhere, dude. And some of these people that are posting this kind of like seemingly anti-Semitic, you're just like, you might think, oh, well, they're just criticizing Israel on this one thing or whatever the deal is. And then they launch into full anti-Semitism. You know what I mean? But I think the reality is that a lot of these people on the right that are posting this stuff, they are outright anti-Semitists, because I can see their other activity. So don't be naive about that. I think that, of course, in any kind of conflict, there's going to be plenty of room to criticize individual things that happen, right? Has a different story to me? Well, like, so like, if we were to try and get more concrete, people on the right are pushing very, very hard to not give any kind of foreign aid to Israel anymore. Right? That's the ultimate political, like the current political goal for that group of people on the right now, right? I think it's stupid. I think it's stupid. I think that there's certainly a lot of people that are kind of just being misled because their natural tendencies about taxes and things like that. But all of the alien questions can be answered by under the ice in Antarctica. Okay. I forgot that the alien conspiracies all tie into South Pole conspiracies. Yeah, Jewish cabal is one thing. Israel isn't perfect is another. Well, sure, but how do you get from that to we should defund Israel? Alien conspiracies are so good. It is such an interesting. I mean, I could see the people before why some people would be super interested in UFOs, especially when what was the guy's name that he said, I worked in one of these programs and I saw this technology, and this is Lazar, is that what his name was? Right? Certainly when that came out, it got interesting, right? But now it's like we're getting crazy stuff every month. It's wild. A lot of it is total BS. It's really hard to separate the stuff that's yeah. Anyways. No, I don't, on the Israel thing, I don't get how people go from the Netanyahu government is maybe not the best, Israel makes mistakes, and we should completely defund them so that they get completely overrun by the Muslim countries and genocided off the face of the earth. Because that's what would happen. I just, like, I just can't, I'm still super triggered by and can't get over that there was like one of the most horrific acts of genocide ever with this attack, and people immediately turned around and started attacking the Jews and supporting Hamas. It's insane to me. How have people lost their minds? Is that it? Absolutely is. Let me tell you something. And this is another one that drives me crazy. I don't think that conservatives are conservative. They're anti-government. If you are conservative, then you should understand why the United States holds the position of prominence that it does in the world today, and what the factors that led up to that, and what are the factors that could potentially undermine that position of prominence or affect it. And the reason that we hold the spot that we do is because of the relationships that we have with other countries. And Israel is the strongest one. Our foreign interests are absolutely supported and helped by Israel. And allowing Israel to be wiped off the face of the earth would probably be the most damaging thing to United States foreign policy that could possibly happen. Nobody's going to trust you after that. And then, it's just like these things that, because Biden has made some decisions where they didn't support our allies, okay? I don't think that you should have left the Kurds hanging. I guess that was kind of Donald Trump's fault, wasn't it? I don't think that you should have just pulled out of Afghanistan and left them high and dry all of a sudden, just like that. That was so stupid. And other people have seen the weaknesses, and now what do you have happening? Iran is hijacking oil tankers. Like, come on. Right? So we have these relationships and we have open and free trade around the world. Now, because we've screwed up, that free trade is threatened. And what will be the consequence of that? Well, if this continues to blow up the way that it is, it's going to mean higher prices for things. It's going to mean higher prices for oil and higher prices for everything else. It's inflationary, essentially. But that's why it's in our best interest. Their anti-government has been left-leaning since he moved out of the gold standard. I think the argument for returning the gold standard is as conservative as it can get. Well, I suppose that the returning to the gold standard would be a conservative argument like 100 years ago, sure. But I kind of think that like once you have a program in place and it's shown itself to be effective, that you kind of you move on. Otherwise, conservative would mean that we need to return back to like having a king and the Roman Empire and all that shit, right? Okay, so can I go back now, backtrack, since I don't know if we have anything more to say on that one. Has the Federal Reserve transferred money to the top? Yes and no. Which is to say, the Federal Reserve is a factor in wealth going to the most wealthy individuals, but it is not the only factor, nor is it probably the biggest factor, actually. So, I think that the biggest issue that you have right now is that people's labor is just worth less, right? Because of globalization. So globalization is the largest factor in wealth going to the top, right? The labor of a person that makes the sell, makes the deal, is the CEO, is in charge of things, is extremely, extremely important to the bottom line of the company. And the labor of the person that is sewing together clothes means absolutely squat because there are so many people that can replace them. That's the reality of our world today. Now, that's important to realize because that it may not always be that way. Okay? The advent of artificial intelligence may shift that balance in your favor. So it's important to realize that. But, the Federal Reserve with their lower interest rates, that really helped people that already had a lot of money. And, so they became richer. I don't necessarily think that it was necessarily at our expense per se, but yeah, they have a larger share of the economy now because of that. Part of that was because of the overall environment anyways, right? Probably they shouldn't have kept interest rates so low for so long. But what are you going to do? I don't think that it's actually the Federal Reserve's fault. I think that it's really the fault of Congress. If Congress had a balanced budget and was actually doing their job, I don't think that monetary policy would have had to have gone the way that it is. You see what I mean? Like the Federal Reserve is just reacting to the monetary conditions at the time. In my perspective, the Federal Reserve is largely a force of nature with rules that we can predict pretty well. We're not perfect, but we have a pretty good idea of what they're going to do well before they do it. Not just because they tell us, but because we know what their reaction function is and so forth. And it's Congress is really the one that has the power to come in and say, we're going to have a smaller deficit or whatever, right? Because when Congress has a deficit, really what they're saying is, okay, we want to print more money. Yeah. So it does, but what I'm saying is, yes, the one of the impacts from interest rate policy over the last 20 years has been greater wealth inequality. But I don't believe that the blame for that actually rests with the Federal Reserve and the people making decisions at the Federal Reserve. The people making decisions at the Federal Reserve made basically the only choices they could based on the situation at hand. The ones that failed you were your representatives in Congress who are too busy making themselves rich off of their backroom deals with lobbyists and so forth, that they haven't actually done anything to, like, they haven't passed a budget in forever. I can't tell you if the United, if we could go back, I get a time traveling machine, okay, and I go back to Thomas Jefferson when he was writing the Constitution, and I say, look, listen, Tom, in the future, Congress like just spends so much, and there's so much money involved in trying to get money from Congress, and they pass an income tax and all of these sorts of things. There has to be a mechanism in place in order to force Congress to be fiscally responsible. So what we should say is that the budget must be positive, and that, you know, if they don't pass a budget, then they're all fired or something like that, right? Or balanced, but basically a balanced budget amendment was in the Constitution from the very beginning. I can't tell you how different our world would be, how different the situation in the United States at this current time would be, and we would be so much better off. We really would. You wouldn't have the same level of inflation. So put the blame where it belongs. So this is what I'm saying. Interesting take. Some people think it's tech, but your point about globalization makes sense. Well, that's not necessarily a different point, right? I think that the technological changes is a part of globalization, for sure. I've been pushing for Seth to go on rants, but it looks like I've fallen victim to the saying, "Be careful what you wish for." Yeah. See, this is my conundrum, is that if you're a far left radical, you're not going to like listening to me at all, right? What I say and like me as a person is going to be much more attractive to a person that's conservative or that is Republican, right? But then there are things that I know about the world and about finance in particular that just directly contradicts what conservatives believe, and is often why some conservatives became conservatives. You know, like there are a lot of people that are in the Republican Party because Ron Paul sold them on getting rid of the Federal Reserve. And I don't believe that. But like if I can go back and if you just think about it like from a macroeconomic perspective, okay, the price of things is dependent on supply and demand, which means how much money there is to make the commodity and how much money there is to buy the commodity. Okay, so your money supply is a critical factor in that. And that means that your money supply is going to have to be able to change based on the situation. There's just no way around it. You can't have a large modern economy. If we had not moved off of the gold standard, we would not be the powerhouse that we are today. Okay, Great Britain would still rule the world, basically. What, that mechanism was the gold standard? Not true. So let me tell you something. Go back and look at like Andrew Jackson. I think that the best way to disprove that one is go and study Andrew Jackson's presidency. Because what did he do during his presidency? He got rid of the Bank of the U.S. There was a Bank of the U.S. and he got rid of it. And what happened in the time period between when Andrew Jackson got rid of the Bank of the U.S. and when we had the Federal Reserve, okay? And during all of that time, they were still on a gold standard, okay? Was there corruption in Andrew Jackson administration? Yes, there was. Andrew Jackson basically invented political corruption in the United States. I mean, I'm sure there was political corruption before that, but that was when people started to see it and realize that it was happening, was with Andrew Jackson, because he basically put people into his cabinet because they, because of backroom deals and stuff like that. There's an interesting correlation between my jokes and your hair. Probably do need to shave here, but so when you have a gold standard, politicians still do corrupt things. And like the crazy thing is that the gold standard didn't necessarily like hamper Congress's ability to issue debt and do things like that either. That's the other thing. So like, well before Andrew Jackson, for instance, there was an instance where they just like took all $5 notes out of circulation. That was when we were on a gold standard. So but you have to be able to modify the money supply based on the current circumstances. The only way that you can do that is with a fiat currency. Okay, I don't understand what you're saying then. But either way, like the in order to have a modern economy, basically you have to be able to manage your money supply. There's just no way around it. And what we did was we created a board, and we did it in, I think, the most sensible way that still preserves people's freedoms. Because we could just let Biden decide what the interest rate is. Like what happens in Turkey, and you see how that turns out, right? Where they do have they do have a central bank, but they don't have any independence, right? Central bank digital currency. Well, so can I tell you something where it does kind of get interesting? And this is another thing where I'm not making a suggestion on the way that things should go. So I just want to make that clear, because I think that some conservatives might dislike what I'm about to say. In the past 10 years, we have had incredibly easy monetary policy, and there's been a lot of money printed. And, one of the arguments or one of the things that kind of came about as a result of that is that some people on the left decided that means that we can just print as much money as we want and there's no consequences because we're the reserve currency. Well, there are some things that we can get away with because we're the reserve currency, but the reason that we were able to print so much money was because, one, we were experiencing deflation. And two, that money is basically only given to the banks and the rich people and just sloshes around through the markets. It didn't actually make it down to the lay people where it can potentially create inflation. Right? So the reason that the central bank digital currency becomes interesting is because now you have the ability to do this money printing and give it to a different group of people. Now you have a mechanism to give it to somebody other than the banks, which on one hand should be give you a better multiplier on that money, but on the other hand presents risks to inflation, right? Imagine if instead of the Federal Reserve giving more money to JP Morgan to lend out to people and so forth, that the Federal Reserve just gave you loans. And not like they gave you a loan for you to go out and buy groceries with, but they gave you a loan to start a business with. That there was some control over it, that capital had to be used for creating businesses. Because, I kind of feel that to some extent there are a lot of businesses that could potentially work out that aren't given the chance. I don't know. Maybe the banking system does a good job of it, and I just don't even know what I'm talking about. But ultimately, I don't think a central bank digital currency would be a good thing, because I just don't trust Congress to be able to craft it in a way that would actually be safe. I think it could be done, but I don't think that it would be done in a way that preserves freedom. So I ultimately would be against the central bank digital currency. Yeah, that mechanism actually exists. It doesn't work very well, though. Well, yeah. Because basically what happens is that we've determined that what gives you a best return on capital is not the most innovative idea. I was going to say not necessarily the most innovative idea, but your idea being super innovative, it actually can kind of hurt you, right? And instead, we found that the thing that gives you the best return on your money is giving it to somebody that already has a lot of money to begin with. It's kind of messed up, right? So because of that, I mean, like in other words, what I'm saying is, there is real mechanisms within the microstructure of our economy that basically mean that the best way to get a return on your money is to put your money where there's already a lot of money. There are dynamics like that. And so if you want to reverse that, you're going to have to create structures specifically to push against that, right? You have to say, if this is a person, they've never run a business before and they have a really innovative idea, that there's money specifically for them, or that there's more money specifically for those people. And that for the people that already have a lot of capital, that there are things that make it increasingly difficult for them to get a better return on their capital, so that the capital gets allocated to different people. Right? As an example, momentum is a real factor in markets. There can be certain macroeconomic factors that can cause a commodity to trend for a long time. And when funds and investors and so forth are investing into something, it takes a long time for them to allocate their capital. Oh, by the way, I forgot that Bitcoin has started here. They are moving up on the day. I would expect Bitcoin to be positive today. In fact, I think that probably we close the day above 50,000. Simply because people buying Bitcoin on the exchange, they're allocating the money in there and it's moving up. And it will take them days, months to do that allocation. So I don't think I want to be short Bitcoin in 2024. Maybe at some point it ends and it does turn into a short, but the only flows that I know about are the ones that are long, right? Okay. So momentum effects are a thing. Well, in order to take advantage of momentum effects, you need to have like at least $10 million in order to have enough money to allocate to enough different instruments to actually get enough samples to take advantage of that structural inefficiency, right? So what does that end up meaning? And the bigger that you are, the more efficient you can be at it. So basically what that means is the best momentum funds get really big. And I think that you would be surprised that like some of the biggest momentum funds out there that are managing huge amounts of money, that the strategy that they're actually using to invest their money is not as complicated as you think it is. There's probably a lot of other things related to the strategy that are super complicated, like how do you actually execute the trades? But the actual signal, like we're going to buy this now, it's way more simple than you think. Means you can't actually get money if you have an innovative, disruptive idea. Yeah. On YouTube, If you are talking about a subject that nobody knows anything about, then nobody is searching for it, and the algorithm doesn't really show it to people. Instead, the algorithm shows people topics that have already come to prominence. And it allocates more and more views to those particular topics until people get sick of it and then move on to the next thing. So there's all sorts of really valuable information about the world that just gets slept on because it's not shown to people. Like, you have to go out and find it. Underground, man. I'm totally about the underground. If it's being served to you on a silver platter on the news and everything, it's probably not actually the most useful information. It's the stuff that you have to actually go out and seek that's going to be the most valuable. So, if we know that that happens and we know that that's kind of overall bad for progress, then we would need to think with having respect for the existing institutions and the way that things work now, where are small intentional changes that we can make that would shift the structure of the market in towards supporting more innovation, right? Bitcoin is starting to take off now. It's already jumped up really big since I just said that in the last minute. The government gives you money to start a business, but it has to be a business in certain government-approved sectors. Ah, yes. And see, in that situation, that's where a central bank digital currency would simply allow them to do that sort of a program more efficiently, right? Right now, there's a lot of overhead in running those sorts of things, so I don't know if the government actually gets their money's worth on them or not. We should start a discussion. Chiwi wants me to go on rants. I don't really know if I've really gone on a rant yet. If you want me to go on a rant, I can talk about how Bitcoin is completely damaging to society. And that I hope that after everybody buys in, that the government announces that they're doing an investigation of Tether. Sorry. I hope that when everybody's invested, that the government announces that they're investigating Tether and that the whole thing just crashes to the ground. Okay, from your experience, do you see ZN leading the others the most? I'm going to say no. So it's kind of interesting. So first of all, since I've recentered things, you can see that the 10-year is actually down a little bit more than the others. So what that kind of means is that the convexity of the curve is changing, right? So you can think of it as like, basically, you've got the curve here, right? And the 10-year moved up a little bit more than this, which is a little bit more than this, I think. Yes, because the 5-year is actually up a little bit, so the curve moved in that kind of a thing. Okay, so the way that you take advantage of those is through butterflies. So is that what they call them, butterflies? But basically, it's a spread that's like involves all three instruments instead of two instruments. Okay. Usually, in a situation like this, you're going to see either the 5-year or the 30-year moving more. In this instance, particularly with the pullback from the lows, it looks like the 5-year moved more. Okay. It looks like the 5-year actually moved more. So technically, the 5-year is the one that's leading. Okay. But the other caveat to that is that there's more speculation in the 30-year because it's a large tick instrument and so forth. The people that are speculating that really want to get their money's worth, they do it over here. So it's not uncommon to see like ZB will tick down first. It'll only be by like a few milliseconds, but it will tick down first. But then you'll see ZF tick down, and when ZF ticks down, it ticks down 2 ticks or something like that, right? But overall, seeing which one is like kind of leading the others, it's so fast that you can't really trade it. So really, when I'm noticing those sorts of things, the only reason why I would be taking note of it is to try and determine what might be happening with the yield curve. Because like right now, if I was trading this and I was buying, I definitely would have wanted to have bought the 5-year. I would have made a lot more trading the 5-year than the 30-year. Or it would have been easier to trade it, at least. Sometimes the tick value of this over here kind of compensates, but you know, you're going to be easier to get a good a spot that like doesn't come back on you and that sort of thing over in here. So the order flow on the futures, can it really move price anywhere like opposite? It's absolutely. So here's the thing that you need to realize is that order flow is really strong. Okay. It takes way less flow to move this thing than you think. Every little thing that is being passed into this instrument has some degree of impact. Now in the treasury market, it's the strongest. Okay. The futures market is basically the primary moving, like originating market for action in interest rates and bonds. All right. The traders, they trade the futures, and then everything else is kind of reacting to the futures. Okay. It changes to varying degrees for other instruments, right? Like when I'm talking about the S&P 500, yes, somebody coming in and buying a lot of contracts in the ES futures will have an impact, but somebody buying in an individual stock like Apple also has an impact, right? And trying to do that for everything in the index is like a way super complicated thing. But my understanding is that it is done. Okay, but essentially, because like, you know, there's arbitrage between those things, right? Order flow in one side is going to impact the other side too. They're not. You can't think of them as separate. You just kind of have to think of it as there's one gigantic pool that is that market. Let's say equity index futures, right? That means that pool includes the S&P 500, Russell, individual stocks, etc., 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 right? And putting money into or taking it out from any one of those components will have an impact on that market as a whole, generally speaking, right? We would prefer to trade in a market where it's all centralized in one place, like it is in the futures, where most of the action is happening that we care about, or at least is happening here in the treasuries, because then we can see it and it's easier for us to interpret and read, right? This applies for black holes too, as people say, well, it happens in the black hole, you can't see it. Well, yes, but it still eventually has an impact, because what happens is like you sell a bunch of a stock in the black pool. What happens is some other trading firm buys it from them and then turns around and sells it on the open market. And as long as they can do a better job at selling it on the open market than the price that they had to pay for it on the dark pool, they make money, right? So it all comes through in the end. Just might be a little bit more difficult for you to be able to see the flow and interpret it. But for what we're trying to do to predict order flows, it doesn't really matter. It's like, well, inflation was a little bit hotter than anticipated, and it's going to cause the Federal Reserve to be a little bit more cautious about cutting interest rates. Ergo, people are going to sell. There's going to be flows that can predict flows, and there's a certain amount of people that we can look at that are going to sell. And we just know overall that it's going to come through. And then I can come in and I can verify, okay, they are selling it. So they haven't gotten too far yet. I'm going to jump on board because I know there's some more selling coming. Or like we could do on Bitcoin right now. Bitcoin is probably the easiest. I don't want to listen, I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to touch it, but I think the trade in Bitcoin, you could have gotten 45,000 last night. I was saying in chat, like, I think you buy it. You're already, well, they're not to 5,000 yet, but you're already almost up 10%. That's like probably one of the easiest trades ever. All these people that are saying, oh, it's already priced in, they're full of shit. They don't understand how the market works. They're going off of old theories based on fundamentals and the market pricing in things and stuff that is not actually how the market works. And that's why their models are always so wrong. With our model, the order flow model, and even using order flow from like a kind of like a larger macro or mesosphere kind of level. So they call it mesosphere, I think. The outcome is very clear and obvious. The ETF allows more money to come in long on Bitcoin. Ergo, you're going to see Bitcoin price rise. It's just that simple. And I would say it's been an okay rise here this morning, but it's probably going to continue. And there will, of course, be like sells, but I think you're going to continue to see more money allocated into Bitcoin this year. I hate that because I don't like Bitcoin, but that's what the order flow tells us. It's an easy trade because you know, and you can't price it in. That money is going to go into Bitcoin regardless of what price you set it at. They're going to buy it. So you can't price it in. It's just going to move up. So I'm really interested to see today if the conversations that I see out there on social media and the news make a big deal over where Bitcoin closes today or not. Because a lot of people were talking like that the way that it behaves immediately after the announcement is the big deal, and we'll see what happens. But and a lot of people think that it was a sell the buy the rumor, sell the news sort of a thing. Elon Musk is still tweeting this morning. Now he's starting to tweet about illegal immigration. This is where it starts to get like a little bit like, oof. So did you see this whole thing about in the Arizona ballot? It basically says like on the ballot that they can't require proof of your federal voter eligibility. They're basically straight up saying because of a court case. So it's not just in Arizona. It's basically, this is across the country. They're basically saying, hey, if you're an illegal alien and you register to vote, nobody can challenge that you're legal. So they're basically encouraging illegal aliens to vote. If there really was like widespread voting by the 3 to 5 million illegal aliens that have come across during Biden's term, I don't see how any Republican could win anything anywhere. But I don't know if it's actually going to work like that. I tell you what, man. It's Pandora's box, right? The whole thing to the allegory of Pandora's box is that it doesn't matter if you close the box after everything's escaped, right? You elect, like, let's just say for the sake of, well, not even for the sake of argument. I don't know why I'm saying it like that. I still think that the probability is that Donald Trump wins the election right now. A lot's going to change, so our ability to predict something like that is very, very limited. But if the election was held today, Donald Trump would win. He could close the border, start this huge, massive deportation program and all that sort of stuff. I don't. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. It would be a very divisive, negative thing. You'd probably just get this thing where next person that comes around just like reverses it, right? Like, the reality is that the demographics are going to change. It's not necessarily going to mean what Democrats think it means, but it is going to change things. And I think that you're going to see all sorts of crazy politics off of it. Think they'll go hard left? Well, if it did give Democrats more political power, like if Joe Biden was president again and he had a 60% majority in the Senate, they absolutely would go hard left, yes. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's over for... So the thing that I think people discount is that here again, the microstructure of American politics and the American system in particular, at a national level at the very least, basically leads itself to two parties. So we've already seen a situation in US history where a party just straight up died. Because the Conservative Party used to be the Whigs. The Whig Party died. And then, you know, the Republican was one of the few, like, kind of third parties that formed after that and became the big challenger, right? So if the Republican Party, like, quote unquote, died, you would either see a new party rise to meet the Democrats, or the Republican Party would just shift until it was competitive. But the issue is, the thing that's kind of funny here is that Hispanic immigrants are not liberal. They only vote Democrat because they think the Democrats are their friend, and because of, like, the immigration issue. But, like, on individual issues, they agree on Republicans with almost everything. So like, this huge demographic shift is not necessarily positive for Democrats, right? See, I think you're only half right, Uzi. I think you're half right. Like, maybe that's the last Republican. This is not necessarily a positive thing for far left liberals. Well, so that's a great case. Neither are black voters, but it doesn't matter. They mostly vote Democrat. I would say that, especially nowadays, especially the kids, that they are liberal, but you are seeing black people leave the Democrat Party in droves. Is basically like, as soon as they detect that they're not the most important demographic to that party, it falls apart. Right? That's the problem with having people in your coalition that don't actually believe in your ideas and are only in there for community identity purposes. Is that as soon as you're no longer treating them like royalty and the most important part of your coalition, they leave. And so what's happening now is the Democrats are treating Palestine and Muslims as the most important minority, and blacks and Hispanics are kind of going, well, hold on a second. And they may be switching back towards Hispanics, so they'll keep them, but it looks like their share of black vote is declining, and that is having significant problems for them electorally. Maybe. Like, have you looked at some of the latest polling coming out though lately? Let's see if I can find it. No, I saw this thing on Reddit the other day that was, you know, they had a story about a poll in New Hampshire showing that Biden was up in New Hampshire. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know it's bad when they're talking about polls in New Hampshire, because that is not even remotely challenged right now. Trump versus Biden. Are they still only doing national polls? I saw a poll that was just for Michigan showing Trump up in Michigan. Let's see here. Poll Trump Michigan. I don't know. Remember how to spell Michigan. There we go. A poll conducted by the Michigan-based Glenn Gariff Group from January 2nd to January 6th has Trump beating Biden by 8 points, 47% to 39%. So you can't really take those kinds of polls too seriously until after Labor Day. But 8 points, that seems very significant to me. And comes back to just like if the election was held today, Trump would win. And I guess that's the other part of it, though, is like I wish I could prove that like voter fraud was a thing, right? If Donald Trump doesn't win this next election and he's still pulling like that on election day, then you're really going to see people flip out, aren't you? I mean, like, I remember saying that last time, and I don't think it was nearly as bad as I thought it was. But, you know, it was close. If Trump is pulling that well ahead of Biden after Biden is just so widely hated and Biden still wins, I think that you're going to see a very large swath of America just completely give up on democracy, man. You know? If Biden was pulling like that and lost, the left would nuke half the country. They would throw a real fit, wouldn't they? I tell you, it's the narrative control. It really is, right? Like one of the things that bothers me is that a lot of stuff that become the flashpoints, I'm usually like, well, I don't think that you guys are completely seeing the full picture. Like, here's the nuance in this that where I can see like both sides are kind of wrong and so on and so forth, right? But what bothers me about it is that I can very clearly see actions by people to just kind of manipulate social media and control the narrative. And Democrats have been doing it from as far back as I can remember. And it's just so effing ridiculous for me to see all of them come out and be like, oh, we're not doing that. And you guys are just election deniers. After all the shit that I saw after George Bush won, like, good grief. Like the hanging Chad fiasco and all of that. Come on. When I was a kid, Democrats were the ones that said that elections were illegitimate and rigged. Okay. And now that it's Republicans saying it, you're not allowed to talk about it publicly. Give me a break. You're so full of shit. You're just doing narrative control you're literally censoring people on social media based on what you think is most advantageous for your political party at that time. Otherwise, you would have squelched them back after George Bush. Of course, there wasn't Facebook back then, but nobody had any problem with them talking about it. We all just kind of laughed. Well, it's not going to change the outcome. Mm. I don't think democracy is bullshit. I think democracy has some flaws that we either need to accept or make some changes for. Because you don't see me advocating that we install a monarchy or something like that, right? Yeah, those flaws are that majorities can be retarded. I think you could be more specific than that, right? There are certain effects that lead to undesired outcomes, and so there's a larger problem in the world. I tell you what, it's kind of funny because most of the things that you look at on this kind of a subject, I think that you will find that you can kind of relate them back to this one particular idea. Okay. And that is when a metric becomes a target, it becomes a useless target. Right? So when you come out and you say Sharpe ratio is a great way to determine how good a fund is performing, then all of the funds try and optimize their Sharpe ratios, and now all of the sudden Sharpe ratio isn't a good measure anymore. Right? And that's what we do here in democracy is we come in and we say, well, if we take the average of everybody's opinions and we put them together and we get a vote on that tends to do a good job at making good decisions. But then when everybody knows that and we're all participating in that process, it screws the process up, right? And so then and once people realize how those things work, the further along it gets, my voice keeps cracking because of my throat, but the further along it gets, the less effective it becomes, because now all of a sudden people realize that, people don't really make decisions based on how well they know your policy and things like that. They make decisions based on like how famous you are, how much name recognition you are. If you're running for a local office, how much name recognition you have is the biggest factor as to whether or not you will get elected. Straight up. Has nothing to do with how qualified or how good of a decision they'll make. Right. So it's not, that's what I'm saying. You could be more specific, right? That's one of the effects, probably one of the most problematic effects that kind of leads to democracy. So it's not like that democracy was a bad idea or something like that. It's just, it has flaws, right? So if we come in and we say, okay, well, if you take one person that we just know is very highly qualified and knowledgeable on these subjects, because we've basically been training him to do it from birth, they tend to make okay decisions too. Well, actually it does, but then there are flaws with that, because that's what a king is, right? And kings did have some progress, okay? Like when you had kings, that resulted in stronger and better societies than when it was just like scattered tribes and stuff like that, right? But eventually became oppressive. There was problems with it. It had to be overthrown and replaced with something different, right? So are we saying democracy doesn't work and it should be overthrown with something different? What are you talking about replacing it with that? I don't think so. I think that you need to fix the problems with democracy, not like replace it, right? Now, how do you do that? That's the hard thing. Do things to make the public more educated on what's going on? I think that would help. Rules to improve Congress. I always come back to Congress, man. I don't think that presidential elections would be nearly as bad if, like, Congress did their effing job. Man, another 2 scammers added me today, speculators. Yeah, the government is doing misinformation. I think they are to some extent, yes. making the public less informed on certain subjects. I don't know. It's not as simple as the government says it's in our best interest that our citizens don't know what's going on, and so we're going to go out there and give them all of this false bullshit. It's not quite how it works, right? More than anything, they're more concerned about what they consider to be false information spreading around, which is just so sad that they distrust the public so much. Because it seems to me that it's the individuals with power that should be distrusted. Oh, the public can't be trusted. Let's just exact more power than we should ever have, and expose the entire country to all of our flaws and mistakes instead. Okay. Freaking idiots. More so than anything, it's that there's a lot of opinions out there that they really believe it, and then they're able to turn it into fact. It's like all of these people from the DEI world. Because they can point to all of these studies and everything. You go and read the studies, and they're not scientific studies. It's philosophy masquerading as science. Why does the 10-year auction affect the ZBUB more than the 30-year auction? It doesn't. But you might have had a larger tail on the 10-year auction, causing the overall treasury market to move more because of that. You also have to remember that a 10-year auction is not actually a ZN. It's so there's also a duration difference there. Just look at the flows today. Well, why would you be looking at the flows today to determine something about an auction? We have the 30-year auction today, yes, but we just had a CPI release. All of the flow that you're seeing is because of CPI. And yesterday, they didn't really move at all. So I don't know what you're trying to say there. But think of it this way, okay? So there's an auction. At the end of the auction, there's a yield, then, and that's what everybody at the auction gets, right? So you come in here, and there will be a percentage, and last time it was 4.344 for the 30-year. We'll see what it will be this time, right? You can look over here in the 30-year, and you can see what they're pricing right now. Okay, they're pricing for 4.227. Okay. So when that release comes and hits the market, there's going to be a difference between the two, essentially. And that is what they call stopping through or tail, right? So the market priced a certain thing, and then they misprice it because they can't completely predict what the auction is going to be. And so there's a difference between what the market thought the auction would be and what the auction actually was. And that's what the stop through or the tail is, right? So if I'm in the 10-year treasury, right? And there's a tail of 1 basis point, okay? What that means is you would get, for buying that treasury, 1 basis point more every year for that 10 years. Okay? Well, what does that mean for the 30-year? That means that you will get 1 basis point more every year for 30 years. 3 times as much. Right? 3 times as much, except for that the ZB is twice as big as the ZN. And so what you'll tend to see is you might get a move off of an auction, and you may actually see the ZB move more than the ZN simply because of ZB's duration. So if it weren't for CPI, we would have the same flow as yesterday. Kind of. If CPI was tomorrow, then we would probably see similar flow as yesterday. Basically, yesterday was really slow, primarily because people were waiting for the CPI news. If there was if CPI had happened like last week, then it would be a completely different thing. You would maybe still be able to have relatively free trade today, but, probably wouldn't have been as dead as it was yesterday, yeah. I should keep my microphone up high to get me, because sometimes I'll start really crouching down into it. Well, I spent a lot of time talking today. They came back from here 70 to 40. I really do wish that I would have found a trade in all of that, but, when it started really pushing back and it got all the way back up to 112.01, that was when I was kind of I don't think that I'll be able to actually get a really high probability trade in this, even though I think that the trade is short at the time. Although I think that today's action kind of makes the next 3 months just more difficult, right? Because the easy trade, let me back up. The situation right now is that we are seeing fissures in the funding markets. That basically the high interest rates are starting to put stress on things, and that quantitative tightening in particular is problematic. So that's why the market largely expects them to cut interest rates in March, for instance. It's because if they don't, you're going to start seeing things break. Okay. Well, so the easy thing would be that we need to reduce, reduce the amount of quantitative tightening that we're doing and not have to raise rates and maybe even cut rates. That would be the easy thing, right? But if we're getting inflation and we need to keep interest rates high because of inflation, then all of a sudden things get super, super complicated. And the possibility of it all blowing up in their faces and turning into a recession go a lot higher, right? Because then you are forced to make a choice between financial stability or low inflation. And at that point, you maybe err on the side of price stability and just let the recession happen. Because if you don't, then that continues to just get worse and worse. We've got 3 months to think about it. The gears turning. So somebody was talking about, I made a post on Reddit that was relatively popular where I said, now that we have a Bitcoin ETF, we just have to wait for everyone to buy in before announcing a government investigation of Tether and watch it all crash to the ground. And this person was saying, well, you'll be able to buy options on a legitimate broker and bet on a decline, or assuming puts will likely be overpriced since there is no way to correctly estimate tail risk. Buy call put parity, some defined risk short call strat can be a serious moneymaker. I would almost I would bet you that calls will be worth more than puts most of the time over in Bitcoin. But they probably will be expensive, yes. Probably be too expensive for me to play with. I'll probably still be better off buying far out of the money puts on MSTR instead. Right? Well, maybe not. Maybe not. I guess we'll just have to see. Maybe I can say, let's go. I should go to Fidelity and see if I can see it. Will they only let me see theirs, or will they have... you know what, actually, I can log in. I don't want to go through all that effort at the moment. Oh. I think I need to... I'm going to go silent here for a little bit and check on something. You're right. I'm muted. I said at the beginning, I think it's hawkish, but not like too hawkish. And where are we? Well, we were at 4% somewhere around about there yesterday. Now we're at 403. So 3 basis points. 3 basis points sounds about right for that CPI. And the amount of flows that we've seen also. Although there was a lot of buying on that pullback. That happened around the time of the equities open. So I'm not quite sure what to make of that. But it does look like it's starting to settle down, so I don't know if we would really have very good picks now. Now that we kind of got some of that stuff out of the way, though, we might kind of have some more gentle flows that we might be able to game out a situation where we get a good pick. See? Got PPI tomorrow. That will still be that'll still be important to look at too. Shall we try and read about Zero Hedge, what they thought about it? Iran hijacks oil tanker in Gulf of Oman. Is the story now? Or was just an oil tanker had been hijacked? Wall Street reacts to today's hotter than expected print. Haley is going to get smoked. Chris Christie caught on a hot mic before quitting GOP race. You and I both know it. She's not up to this. I agree. Well, anyways. Who's left? Haley's still in there. DeSantis is. Oh, and I guess what's his bucket? Yes, what's his bucket's not gonna quit, huh? I can't remember his name. Shows you what I think of him. No, whether or not I remember somebody's name actually says nothing about what I think about them, because I just forget names all the time. Probably they will have New Hampshire and she'll drop out, right? Chrissy goes on to say, DeSantis called me petrified that I would. Unfortunately, the audio cuts off, leaving observers to speculate over what Ron DeSantis was purportedly scared of. A Christie endorsement of Haley? Yeah, that might be. Well, Vivek, that's right, that's his name. Wasn't that there was a debate, right? I didn't even freaking watch it. That's so I didn't even know. CNN's Iowa Republican debate was the beginning of the 2028 presidential cycle. The CNN debate between Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley was okay, but it wasn't what I hoped it would be. The winner was Ron DeSantis. The debate with the two candidates was the one that people have... Oh, so it was just the two of them, was it? Well, cool. They're competing for second place in the Iowa caucus. To be honest, I don't see either overcoming the big lead that Trump has, but I won't rule out anything at this point. This has been a weird political cycle with two frontrunners, Trump and Biden, barely campaigning. They refused to debate. The Democrat primary was rigged by the DNC to ensure Biden doesn't have to break a sweat. The Democrat primary starts in South Carolina, so this time, as to guarantee Biden wins, Trump won't agree to a debate. The other Republicans because of his strong lead, and he feels entitled to the nomination. Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley went around after round for 2 hours. CNN moderators were Jake Tapper and Dana Bush. Oy. Credit where credit is due. They both did a good job and asked questions of interest to Republican primary voters. That's more than most of the other debates were able to accomplish. Oh, then I guess I better go and watch it, because I did really hated the moderators from some of the other ones. So wait, did Vivek drop out? Why was Vivek not, or did he just not qualify? Urges viewers to tune out DeSantis-Haley debate. Ramaswamy, who did not qualify for the debate, alleges in his ad that the media is trying to rig the Iowa caucus in favor of the corporate candidates who they can control. Okay. Sure. The way this works, buddy, is that the the level to qualify goes up and up and up so that the less popular candidates have to drop out and we can see where their support goes to. If you wanted to break out, you needed to do it before now. Your time has already passed. Okay, anyways, back to the story I was reading. DeSantis got the first question and he came in hot. The criticism of Haley began right away. I don't know if I want to read this part because I want to watch it myself. Okay, I think we are watching the beginning of the 2028 presidential cycle. Unless something drastic happens, Trump will come in first in the early primary races. I expect DeSantis to come in second in Iowa and Haley to come in second in New Hampshire. Trump is also leading in South Carolina, Haley's home state. I hope I'm wrong on all that. I'd love to have DeSantis accomplish an upset in Iowa. Trump didn't win Iowa in 2016. And Haley to do, well, it's true that Iowa can shift really fast. So that is one to keep in mind. Haley is getting very close to Trump polls within single digits, so maybe she will pull that off. I know that if DeSantis had performed as well as he did Wednesday night in the first RNC debate, he would be so much better off in the polls. He is hitting his stride now in these debates, and it shows a whole new level of confidence. He is a policy wonk and can talk at length about many issues. Haley sometimes begins to crater and sounds like she has trouble filling her time without relying on her standing talking points. Okay, interesting. He thinks that there's still a chance. So the whole thing is, I guess you kind of do need to see if Vivek drop out too, but you know, if it was Trump versus DeSantis, it could actually be competitive. It could actually be competitive. The sooner that it gets to that point, the more competitive it's likely to be. Because if it's like, you know, Trump has already won New Hampshire and Iowa, and, you know, now it's just down to Super Tuesday, then you have no chance, right? Okay. Headline: consumer price inflation printed hotter than expected in December, a spot 3% month over month versus the spot 2% expected, pushing the year over year headline up to 3.4%. Services, shelter mostly, costs reaccelerated and energy deflation stalled in December. On the brighter side, core CPI rose spot 3% month over month as expected, dropping the year-over-year change below 4% for the first time since May of 2021. Goods deflation has stalled as the used cars and trucks index rose spot 5% month over month after rising 1.6% in November. Yes, and everybody told us that in December it was going to go down. Maybe it needs one more month. We'll see. More problematically for the Fed and the rate cut hypers is the fact that the core CPI services ex shelter, or rather supercore, rose spot 4% month over month, upticking the year over year rise to 4.09. So when you take out shelter, it's really bad. This is a category that Fed Chair Jerome Powell and other policymakers have highlighted as a focus. All of the subsectors of Supercore rose month over month, with the shelter index increased 6.2% over the last year, accounting for over 2/3 of the total increase in the all items less food and energy index. But shelter inflation is slowing. Shelter inflation was up 6.15 year over year in December, down 6.51 in November, and the lowest since July 2022. Rent was up 6.47, down from 6.87, and the lowest since July 2022. And the next time someone from the Biden administration says inflation is down in an attempt to gaslight the public into believing prices are down, show them this chart. Headline costs at record highs. Core costs are at record highs. Food costs are at record highs. Fuel costs on the rise again, of course, because they're always going higher. It's just the rate of increase has slowed to 3% year over year. Gotcha. 4 of the 6 major grocery store food group indexes increased over the month. Is this a pause for the replunge? M2 thinks so. What are they trying to say here? M.2. CPI is the blue one. I'm too colorblind to tell which line is which. I think all of those lines are heading down though, right? So is this a pause before the replunge? M.2 thinks so. They're saying that if you follow M.2 that you will continue to see prices decline and likely a recession, probably, right? Okay, so they say what happens next? Well, with it at 0.3, that is like SPX, maybe down 0.2%. What are they at right now? Negative 0.38. Meh. Not so much Goldilocks perfection. Powell is in a real pickle now. Does the Fed begin shrinking QT in March, which it has to if it's terminating the BTFP and reverse repo is drained without starting rate cuts? That gets very interesting, yes. You don't necessarily want to hike there, but they could cut. Iranian naval forces acting under a court order seized Marshall Islands flagged tanker St. Nicholas, Bloomberg report, citing Iran's semi-official Tasnim agency report. So the report said St. Nicholas is a, quote, U.S. oil tanker. Earlier, research firm Tanker Trackers said Iranians have boarded today in the Gulf of Oman in St. Nicholas. Turkish Petroleum Refineries Corp chartered the tanker, which was transporting 140,000 tons of Iraqi sumo crude. The vessel was en route to western Turkey. Empire Navigation, the vessel's operator, said the tanker was loaded. I'm just trying to figure out who is involved here and how big of a deal is it. It was near a checkpoint, the Hormuz Straits between Oman and Iran. The incident comes right after a U.S. Navy warship shot down 24 missiles and drones in the Red Sea. The Associated Press dubbed the Iran-backed Houthis attack as the largest ever barrage of drones and missiles targeting shipping in the Red Sea. Now, the Pentagon's Operation Prosperity Guardian mission to safeguard critical commercial shipping lanes has to worry about conflict spreading from the Red Sea to the Hormuz Straits. Hold up. I see. I did not catch that. Because I don't remember the names of everything. Well, wait. From the Red Sea to the Hormuz Straits. Okay. So where we were having problems was over here. And where something got hijacked is over here. Because it's coming from Iraq. It's coming from Iraq, coming through there. It came around the Gulf of Oman. And Iran said, nope, we're going to take that. And normally I would think that you would go down through here. And then it was going to come back up through here. And then it was going to go over here to Turkey. Aha. Okay. So that is an important piece of information. but it is not necessarily the same thing as what was going on over here in the Red Sea. I don't know if this is like as a huge, like it kind of has the makings of like groundbreaking happenings that we later are, you know, kind of like the pandemic, like, right? When we were getting stories about like we were following it, we were hearing about it, wasn't a huge deal yet, and then all of a sudden it just like blew up and it was like all anybody cared about. Kind of has the makings of that, but we don't actually know if that's what's going to happen. Okay, I was just browsing there about comments, but I didn't see anything too important to read to you guys on that one, so librarians quit over no porn for kids policy. Okay, this world sometimes. Oh, do y'all think the housing market will become affordable again? No. I want to answer this question. More affordable? Yes. Affordable? Probably not. If interest rates decline, that will... Yep, I'm debating. Well, I'm not debating people on Reddit. I'm answering a question on Reddit. And then I'm sure people will probably try and debate with me, and I'll prove them all wrong. Okay, I answered the question. If interest rates decline, we could get back to a more normal market. You won't be paying as much per month in interest, and it will free more houses to come on the market. A lot of people are staying where they are because they don't want to give up their low rates, so rates declining could free up some inventory. Of course, that can also increase demand, so the end impact on prices is hard to predict. Unless you get a recession, which could really hurt demand and bring down prices. Just like during COVID, though, any such optimal window is likely to be short-lived and followed by mania. In the end, though, we've been underbuilding houses for over a decade. That's not a gap that you can overcome with a wave of the hand. The politicians haven't even begun to work on the problems holding building back, so it is likely that housing continues to be a pain point for years, if not decades to come. Those that want to own a home will probably need to make sacrifices and take risks others aren't willing to take. Well, they've kind of been moving around a little bit here, but they seem to have just settled at 112 even again. I'm going to be interested. We got PPI, and then next week, we've got all the auctions and everything out of the way already. So what does that mean for next week, actually? Forex Factory. Next week, what do we get? Monday is President's Day. That's right. Empire Manufacturing Index. Retail sales on Wednesday. Unemployment claims. Consumer sentiments. Single muscles. Okay, so we got decent, not like major economic news, but decently significant economic news, and we'll still be kind of digesting everything that we got here. So I think that we should get kind of. I'm hoping that we'll get Goldilocks kind of volatility next week. Of course, it could just turn into no volatility again, which would really suck. Right? Volatility index is really low right now, so. Guys, I think I'm going to leave it there. Some interesting discussions today. I will see you tomorrow. In the meantime, stay excellent.